And the Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
You say you want to watch some movies, well, you know MVP is gonna change the world. You tell me that it's just a remake, well, you know it takes something new to change the world. But when you talk about reconstruction, don't you know that you can't count us out? Don't you know MVP is gonna be alright all night, all night.
Coming at you like an Archie had for your brain.
It's MVP
Mutant Radio.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there was MVP Mutant Radio. Welcome back, mutants. This is your host, Strebo. With me, as always, special makeup effects artist, or illusionist, if you prefer, Todd A. Britt. Todd, welcome back to a special Valentine's Day Star Wars Holiday Edition episode of MVP Mutant Radio.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yes, happy VD to you, my friend.
Thank you again.
I've been trying for a few weeks to put together an episode reviewing Ender's Game since we chose it for, since I chose it for the best sci-fi film of 2013. But every time I tried to wrangle in Mutantville player Johnny Brento, we wound up hitting a barrier, couldn't make it happen. So I thought, you know what, I will, why don't we talk about Star Wars Episode 7, and I'll bring in the other MVP Jedi file, or Sith file if you prefer. I'm more on the Jedi side. Todd A. Britt, and that means you, Todd. So
yeah, I'm more on the Sith side for sure. That's
why we get along. Because if we were both Sith, then we would have to try to kill each other, right?
Yeah, we're in balance. We keep the Force balanced.
I thought this would make for a fun episode, though. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our standard MVP opening and discuss our personal experiences with Star Wars, how we got into it, perhaps how it's influenced our lives and work over the years. And then we're going to run down what we know about Episode 7 so far, discussing the basic chronology of the revelations that the film was being made, the script, casting, what have you. I'm going to try to avoid Star Wars rumors because there are just so many out there, especially when it comes to casting and the story itself, that there's no point in committing too much time to it because all of it's unsubstantiated at this point. We have no idea what's real and what's not. So we're just going to kind of focus on the facts for that. Then we'll take a quick break and come back, and we're going to talk about our favorite movies from the series. We're going to give our three favorite movies from the Star Wars series, discuss our three favorite characters, and then three of our favorite moments from the series, from anywhere in the Star Wars series. So it doesn't just have to be the movies, but it's okay if it is just the movies. And I even have a couple bonus ones that I'm going to throw out there. And then we'll close it out with the MVP game. So it should make for a fun show. Sith Todd, or Darth Todd, what's your Sith name officially?
Gosh, I've had several over the years. I think I went with Darth Dracul for a while.
Darth Dracul? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Starkiller Strebo, buddy. The original name of Luke Skywalker's character when he was kind of a combination of Obi-Wan and Luke. He was Starkiller.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so right on. Why discuss Star Wars on Valentine's Day? Because why the heck not? It's been more loyal to me than any other female I've known in the entirety of my life. Not that I'm bitter, but it is what it is when you have just a continuous string of broken relationships behind you. Once Valentine's Day rolls around, it's not necessarily your favorite, day of the year, but it's all good. As often as we have to go through the bad, when the good comes around, everything's worth it. So it's what makes life fun. I don't know about you, Todd, but my adventure with Star Wars started a long, long time ago as a kid growing up near the Gulf of Mississippi when I got to see the original movie in the theater, and it just kind of took off from there. Where'd you get started?
I think mine started further back than you, because I'm 2 years older, right?
Yes.
But
the movie came out at the same time, though.
Well, yeah, but I know it was re-released. Was it like a year later?
Yes.
And then probably even after that. I don't think I even went to the re-release. I've never been into that whole thing. If a movie's good enough, then it's like imprinted in my brain. Like I remember every moment of it. If it's Star Wars good. So I don't need to see it multiple times. But anyway,
I already lived it. Right.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So I I saw it when it came out, the whole family, in May 1977. And I was hooked, like so many people. That was all I was going to say about that.
Okay, thanks for giving me that that notification there. And that just for the mutants that are out there listening, so they're not too confused, that I already lived it line was a reference to one of Todd's lines from the upcoming episode of Mutitious Movie Morgue featuring Roger Corman's The Terror, which we will premiere at the Mad Monster Party this March 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. I guess it's actually going to premiere on the 22nd that night, because we are currently hard at work on putting it together. Gio and myself made the trip to Charlotte this week to the Skinny Puppy Show and had the chance to interview Ogre before the show. And it was an absolute blast. His answers were a lot of fun. And then their show is really insane. It's very visually engaging. They have all these, they have a lot of screens playing, with rear projection behind the stage. And he does a lot of, not vaudeville. What am I thinking? What's the term I'm thinking of? Well, he does a lot of, it's almost like Grand Guignol performances on stage. He's got like knives and he's cutting his arm, it's bleeding. And there's one point where he's like drinking this crazy blue liquid and all kinds of stuff. But it's a very fun stage show.
So it's like pro wrestling.
Yeah, right. Well, it's crazy stage show. Something like Alice Cooper or Kiss or, anybody that's done one of those kind of crazy shows. What is the term I'm thinking of? I'll think of it later when I'm listening to this, and I'm like, dummy, it was this. I know somebody's shouting it at their iPod right now. But Star Wars it was such an influence on me from an early age, and I can see it, heavily in C for Chaos. Now that C for Chaos is being released as a web series, episode 5 just hit the internets this past week, and I can see it there with the numbers killers, a reflection of Darth Vader. The collectors are practically an analog for the Jedi. So I don't want to give too much away, but that influence from Star Wars definitely runs deep. It definitely is responsible not only for setting me off on the path of pursuing otherworldly fiction, speculative fiction, but also as a writer, because there came a point after I'd graduated school and I started working on my own independent comics, and I was going to conventions and talking to editors, and they were essentially telling me to draw like artists that I had no respect for, that were the most mundane, middle of the road artists that had no style, no substance at all to their work. They just looked like everybody else, and it was just kind of flavor of the month. And they were telling me to draw like these guys, if I wanted to work for them. And I was like, why? Nobody should draw like those guys. You should draw like the best. You should have some style, some flair. And I just realized sitting there having those conversations with these editors, I was like, these guys are idiots. They want you to be part of the factory. So I knew then and there that the only way I could draw comics was to come up with my own story, and to just go forth and come up with my own ideas and create original work. And that way I could write it and I could draw it. And up till that moment, I did not consider myself a writer. I considered myself a storyteller, in that I was trying to tell stories visually, which is what translates so well into directing, because, you have, as a comic book artist or a sequential illustrator, you have an understanding of camera angles, you know what a bird's eye view is, what a worm's eye view is, and a close-up, an extreme close-up. And, so many people think being a director is just sitting in the corner talking on your iPhone while everything else is happening, but there isn't a point where you actually have to tell the cameraman what your angle is supposed to be. You have to know what's supposed to go into the actual camera if you want to get any kind of decent result coming out the other side. So the way that Star Wars helped is, I remember reading an article where George Lucas said he took these ideas from Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just go start there. So I went and read Hero with 1,000 Faces from Campbell. And that was the first book I read on writing, though it wasn't really about writing or writing syntax or anything. It's more about mythology, the mythology of the hero, what's known now commonly as the monomyth. And so I read that, since then, that's been boiled down to the hero's journey and the writer's journey and this and that. And they've tried to translate it into kind of a cut and paste, formula for movies. But people aren't going back to the original text, to the original Joseph Campbell text where he, compared all these different mythologies and whatnot. So they're really losing the actual message. So what can you do? But that was actually where I started. So, Star Wars just influenced me in so many ways. I literally remember the first time I was there in the theater, sitting at the end at the aisle seat, on the left-hand side. I'm sitting there drinking my big Coke, and Obi-Wan gives Luke his father's lightsaber, and he's like, "What's this?" It's a lightsaber, from a more civilized age. And he turns it on, and wow, it ignites. And I was just like, wow, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. Because I was so drawn into it. I believed in that world. Star Wars had such a verisimilitude to it because it was grungy and dirty. It wasn't like Star Trek where everything was nice and clean. If you watched it on TV, you're looking at Star Wars, the robots had like grease smears on them. All the machines looked rickety and dirty, and everything had this used, worn out appearance to it. And it just made it seem so real. And then, the effects were so spectacular that as a kid, it just made me completely believe in it. I used to have these vivid dreams about Star Wars, I think it was the year that it was re-released in 78 is when I used to go on my own to go see it. I was finally old enough I could ride my little bike. And I've told this story before on the show, so this is a repeat story, but I'll do it anyway since that's what we're talking about. And every weekend I would ride my bicycle on Saturday and go catch the first screening at 2:00 of Star Wars, and I just go and see it. And then next Saturday, go and see it again. Next Saturday, go and see it again. It was 50 cents or something, to get in. And it just shaped my mind forever. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that, Toddy Britt.
Here's one of my little stories. I vividly remember, I guess I was 8 or 9, maybe 9. So I remember we were out in the yard doing some kind of yard work, like shoveling mulch. I just remember shoveling piles of dirt or something, and the neighbor guy was over. And you know how when you're a kid, people seem like if your parents have friends, they seem so much older, but then when you get older, you realize, well, they really weren't old. So this guy might have been 30 at the most.
Right.
But I just remember him saying, hey, have you heard about that new Star Wars movie? And the idea of sequels just didn't make any sense at that point, because sure, there had been, there was Bride of Frankenstein and all that, but I was so young that I didn't even know that there was, that many sequels that existed. But they certainly weren't anything like they are nowadays. But it never occurred to me that anybody would make a Star Wars 2. So I just immediately wanted to know everything this guy knew. What do you mean? He was like, yeah, it's called Empire Strikes Back. I just couldn't conceive, of it. So I'll always remember that.
It's obvious that Star Wars has been influential on all of us. I finally, over Christmas, I updated my copy of Star Wars. I'd been watching the rickety old VHS version from like the 80s, because that was the only way you could get the original cut. But I finally scooped up the original trilogy on Blu-ray from Walmart. They had it for like $35 over Christmas. So I was like, yeah, I'll go for it.
Yeah, I do want that sometime. I want those new.
They look so good. They look so good. The original trilogy looks spectacular on Blu-ray, and I think the effects hold up to today. I mean, I think they still look better than anything else out there, and it's just phenomenal considering that this was 1977. It's unbelievable. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say I agree, and they were inventing the technology as they were doing it, or shortly before doing it. And I just kept refining it, and this conversation could so easily go on a George Lucas bashing diatribe once we get to the prequels. But you could say when he got more money and more control after the first three movies, that's when he went insane. Like the fact that he could do anything he wanted, it shows in the prequels. But I don't know if we want to go there, because we could easily get stuck in that rut.
Well, you can go anywhere you want to with it. I don't have a problem with George. I mean, he just stumbled on the prequels. I consider George one of the patron saints of guerrilla filmmaking. He came from that Francis Ford Coppola Zoetrope Studios, where they were all filmmaking mavericks, working outside of the Hollywood system.
Yeah, I agree.
To make original ideas,
Like, yeah, I was going to back that up. Like, my other point was going to be, I don't bash him as a filmmaker. I bash him for going insane and making these goofy prequels, which, people may or may not agree. A lot of people agree with that. But as a filmmaker, yeah, he knows what he's doing, because he has made movies that prove that. THX, American Graffiti, both of those were great.
Oh yeah.
And
Howard the Duck, underrated masterpiece.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Okay. I wasn't sure, because I did see that in the theater, and I pretty much don't remember much about it. If that means anything. And he produced the Indiana Jones movies,
of course,
and he wrote. And yeah. So yeah, that's what he's doing. But I don't know what happened with Star Wars once he got the money to do it the way he wanted to do it.
Yeah, well, I'll throw this out there, and then we'll go ahead and launch into the timeline of Star Wars here. I think what happened was it wasn't the creative control, because he had creative control of all the Star Wars movies, of the original trilogy. That was the whole point of doing it the way he did it, so he could make the movies he wanted. He just didn't have the technology, to make it as elaborate as he wanted. And then once the prequels came around and he was working on them, he was just so powerful that people didn't want to gainsay him at all. When he said something was awesome, pretty much everybody surrounding him just went, yeah, it is. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't a young a young, struggling, hungry filmmaker anymore. You know, he's fat, old, rich dad making movies for his kids, pretty much. And the people around him were too afraid of him to challenge him and tell him, you know, hey, these movies, you know, this is lame. You know, though I like the prequels. There are parts I like out of all the prequels. So.
Yeah, there's parts I like, but I can't actually say I like the prequels. I do like parts of, except Attack of the Clones. Maybe the only part I like of that is the lightsaber duel where Anakin loses his arm. Definitely like some lightsaber duels. It's hard to screw that up.
Right. Well, we'll get into that more when we get into the Mandala Chamber and we talk about some of our favorite moments. Perhaps we'll get some more into some of that stuff. So, but let me go over the timeline here, because what happened was Lucas was burned by his interactions with the studio, both with THX 1138 and with American Graffiti, because he shot them and then the studios took the films and wouldn't give him final cut. So they cut both of those films in a way that he wasn't entirely happy with it. So when he got his chance to do Star Wars, he actually turned down his director's fee. They offered him $500,000 for his director's fee. And he said, look, I'll just do $50,000, have complete control, you know, just pay me $50,000 for the director's fee and let me keep the rights to the sequels and the merchandising. And that's where
yeah, that did it.
That's where he was a genius. And there's also the famous story of him visiting like the Close Encounters set while Spielberg is working on that, and he's telling Spielberg, like, this is going to make $1 billion. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen. You know, talking about Close Encounters, and and he and Spielberg worked out the deal where they gave each other a piece of each other's action, and you know, Spielberg turned out winning on that end. Star Wars made buku money.
Yeah, actually, I'd never heard that story.
Oh, really? Well, I was paraphrasing it, but you can hear about it in like Close Encounters documentaries and whatnot. But that original Star Wars trilogy went on to make $1.8 billion over the years, and then in the 90s, in '99, when he released Episode 1, and you know, followed that up with 2 and 3, obviously, the second trilogy went on to make $2.5 billion, which is completely and totally insane. But that brings us up to 2012, because in June of 2012, he started talking to Disney behind the scenes. And before he did that, he had already started talking to Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, and saying, hey, if I do this next set of Star Wars movies, do you want to be in it? And they all said yes. So he went to Disney with that. He had gotten so sick of the hate that people directed at him over Episode 1, 2, and 3, which myself, I never did. I mean, I was just slightly disappointed with the movies, but there were parts I liked of each one of them. But he got so sick of it because people were hating him for trying to make his own movies.
You and I personally are being kind. Like, there's so many hardcore fans that have nothing good to say about any of the prequels, and I don't blame them. You know, I can see why they have that attitude. But you got to be ignorant to not admit what we both admit, that he actually is a good filmmaker. He knows what he's a good businessman.
Right.
But yeah, they don't even know that because they're not filmmakers, I guess.
Yeah, well, they're just fanboys. You know, I'm a fanboy too, but you know, we understand the perils of being an artist, going down that creative path. But Lucas said, well, look, I'll give it to the Disney people. That way it'll be in good hands, you know. And he sold it off for $4.05 billion. And then he turned around and gave all that money to charity. But he sold not only Star Wars, but he sold all of Lucasfilm, Industrial Light and Magic, Skywalker Sound, you know, everything he had. So it was just phenomenal. I mean, when it was announced on Halloween of 2012, I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is insane. This is unbelievable. I cannot believe this. I was so thrilled to hear that they were going to make the next set of movies, because I had been depressed about them not making the movie since 1984. It's just like, oh my God, these movies are never going to get made. I'm going to die before they're ever made.
But I think what everybody, immediately they got the wrong idea. And I don't know all the details. And like I said before that you called me, I haven't even researched any of this lately. Like I read a lot about episode 7 months ago. But when he sold, when he did the Disney deal, I think everybody, including myself, thought, oh, well, he's out. George is out of it. He just sold it. That's not the case. He just got a lot more money to do what he wants to do now. He's still in some capacity. But I don't know exactly.
He's still a producer.
Mm-hmm.
And they made the outline of the films in the deal. So he kind of gave them the outline, and that's part of the deal, was like, well, you kind of have to follow my outline. But then they still have freedom, they still have wiggle room to develop it how they want to, but they have to kind of follow his outline. That's my understanding of it. We'll find out more when it's actually released and they start, we start seeing behind the scenes specials and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think all the adult, real Star Wars fans, of the original generation, like you and me, all we want is for it not to be goofy, like a Muppet Show. That's all I'm asking for. Just some good characters that we can care about. They're interesting. And I don't even care if the original cast is in. I mean, I think that's a bit superficial. Like I think real Star Wars fans are way more intelligent than that. You don't have to feed them the same thing over and over. We know how to embrace new characters. I mean, that's the failings. The Hollywood system does that so many times and just keeps recycling stuff. Like we're just not going to buy it if it's not the same freaking characters or actors, and that's not at all the case, I'm sure.
Well, I do want to see, Luke and Han and those guys continue their story, because it's supposed to be a continuation. 7, 8, and 9 are supposed to be continuations of their story, and I love those characters. I loved all 3 of them, so I do want to see those.
I'd rather see a whole new cast of characters. I'm just going to...
you got a lot of that in the prequels, though, and, we weren't really satisfied with it because of that. I loved Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul.
Exactly, that's what I mean. And, which they were, the 2 best things about episode 1. But here's what I'm not, potentially might not like about episode 7 if it has the same characters. I'm just going to be looking at these actors and thinking about how old they look. It's going to distract me from the character, that I knew they were the young, robust action heroes that I, adored.
Right.
And now they're just.
But they are supposed to be older.
Yeah,
right. But they are supposed to be.
I'd just rather not see that. And I'm not saying there's no way I can know. I could be sitting in the theater, fist pumping. Who knows?
Is seeing an old Princess Leia going to harsh your fanboy boner? Is that going to kill it for you?
That's going to be the worst part. She's
too saggy.
She has definitely not held up as good as old Harrison.
Harrison Ford looks. They're all old now, and acting wise, I don't know. Harrison Ford seems like he has Alzheimer's now or something. But anyway, we're getting off track. Let me.
That's easy to do with this topic.
Yeah, well, let me go back to the timeline. Okay, so they announced that Disney buys everything. The very next thing announced was that Michael Arndt was hired to work on the screenplay. I wasn't familiar with the guy, but actually he had written Little Miss Sunshine, Toy Story 3. He did Oblivion from last year. Then he did Hunger Games Catching Fire. And this might interest you. He's working on something now called A Walk in the Woods.
Oh, sweet.
For all of our Todd A. Britt fans out there, you guys will get that once you see episode 2 of Mutitia's Movie Morgue. But anyway, after he was announced, it wasn't long after that they announced the acquisition of J.J. Abrams as the director, which I thought was a phenomenal choice. When I heard that, I was like, yes, okay, finally. Finally, I'm going to see these movies, and they're going to be good. And I have to give credit to Phil Kay, longtime Mutantville player, for being the one to say Abrams should do the Star Wars movies. After seeing Star Trek 2009, he was the one that said, man, they should get Abrams to do those movies. And then years later, it happened.
I'm not completely sold on Abrams, and I'm not saying he can't. I'm just saying he hasn't done anything that just has totally blown me away yet.
Did you see Super 8?
Yeah, it didn't blow me away, but
that's actually my favorite movie of his. I really love Super 8. I think it's highly underrated.
I like Star Trek better than that, and I didn't even see the second one, but I think he's capable. I think he's a very capable filmmaker. I like lens flares. But I think if he can do what he did to Star Trek, which was Star Wars-ize it, then he should be able to do Star Wars even better than that.
That's pretty much my thoughts. So,
yeah.
Well, to keep him on track, they immediately brought in Lawrence Kasdan as another writer. So you've got Arndt, Abrams, and Kasdan working on the script. Kasdan, as any good Star Wars file should know, was the writer for Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. He also wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark screenplay. He did Return of the Jedi. And so it was only fitting. Yeah, only fitting that they brought him back to keep it on track. The script was announced as finished just this past month, January 19th, 2014, and they've announced the shoot date of mid-May 2014. So they're going to launch into it pretty soon. They've already been in deep pre-production for the past couple months, just costumes, props, that kind of stuff while they were working on the script, And they have what I believe is a Christmas release date for 2015. So they're looking at the end of 2015. It might not be like Christmas Day, but like kind of a Hobbit thing where it's like the beginning of December.
Well, they're going to break the May tradition, man. It's always been May.
It has always been May. It's May 25th or whatever, but because Disney insisted on the 2015 release date, and this was from their original deal, it was like once the ink was on the paper, they said, okay, 2015, we want the movie, and everybody involved had to agree to that. And Abrams had to lobby for those extra months and say, look, give us some more time so we can get it right. And I'm fine with that.
I'm not complaining. Definitely want a better movie for that.
More things we know. John Williams was secured to do the score once again, which is great, because one thing we have seen with a lot of these continuing franchises is that they've abandoned the music in a lot of them. Like if we go to horror films, in Friday 13th, they got rid of that iconic music for the remake. With Star Trek, they got rid of all the Star Trek music, and they've got completely different stuff with Superman and Man of Steel. They got rid of the John Williams score for that. So keeping John Williams on as the composer will keep it feeling truly epic.
That's nearly half your movie right there. And John Williams proved that many, many times over.
I saw a really funny tweet from Dr. Jeff Clock, who we've had on the show for our sci-fi suspense and superhero blockbuster extravaganzas, and he tweeted that he showed Star Wars to this British girl for the first time. She had never seen the movie, and as soon as it started, she turns to him and goes, "Oh, this is where the music comes from."
Wow.
She had never seen the movie, but she had heard the music, and that's how iconic that soundtrack is. It's so uplifting, so uplifting. Okay, a couple more facts. They're shooting it on film, but not IMAX, because Abrams doesn't think IMAX is perfected just yet, which is a shame, because I was really looking forward to seeing this in IMAX. And aside from that, the only other absolute facts we have is that the original cast is involved. You know, Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Peter Mayhew, Anthony Daniels, you know, all those guys. And there's also supposed to be a couple spin-offs. People are guessing that one is going to be about Boba Fett.
Oh, God.
And there's also supposed to be a live-action TV series. Now, why did you say, oh, God, about that?
So,
Boba Fett?
So not a Boba Fett or Jango Fett fan. I just don't get it. I don't get why that character is interesting to anybody at all. But I just hope there's a couple of Sith in it. Now, that's interesting.
So you want to see a Sith spin-off, but you have no love for Boba Fett. I wonder if that's because...
Don hates everything, yes he does. Don hates everything, yeah. Don hates everything, no it's true. Don hates everything, even you.
What do you mean spin-off? I'm just talking about like the main story for the movie. Just
spin-off meaning a Boba Fett movie. Yeah, just
okay,
about his character.
Spin-offs, but yeah, that would be truly awful.
Why do you say that? He's a cool character.
No, he's not. He's just he's like I could just really piss people off if I wanted to, but I'm going to try not to. I started to say he's like the Batman of Star Wars. He's just got a suit and these, you know, things like what do you call them, grappling hooks and shit. It's just boring.
That's too funny. Well,
yeah.
So he's not going to make your list of favorite characters. Well, that's okay. Well, what about a live-action TV show? I mean, that's perhaps has potential, but I lived through the Ewok adventure, so I'm not as optimistic about a Star Wars live-action show.
Oh yeah, I don't have any high hopes for it. If it was Jedi versus Sith, then I'd be into it. But,
that should be the title, even Star Wars Jedi versus Sith this week.
That's what the whole thing. That's when they make these video games, particularly the better ones like Knights of the Old Republic. That's what they're about. That's what the main focus is. That's what people want to play. They want to play with lightsabers. They don't want to be Boba Fett. I'm sure that Boba Fett game or whatever it was, they had a video game. I saw that in the bargain bin, like a bunch of them, for years. So that should tell you something.
That was a really fun video game, the Boba Fett game. But anyway, all right, let's get back to some facts. Ian McDiarmid is supposed to have a cameo, perhaps as the Sith ghost of Emperor Palpatine. So he'll be there influencing people somewhat.
Okay, well, that makes me happy.
Okay, well, good. Of course, Billy Williams will return as Lando Calrissian. But there's nothing confirmed about the story itself. Supposedly, it's supposed to be a mix of being about Han and Leia's kids and Luke's students, but also continuing Luke and Han and Leia's story. So there are going to be new elements mixed together with the old elements, and I'm excited about it. I can't wait.
I'm getting less and less excited the more you tell me. I wish they would just have cameos to the old people. I wish it would just show them at the beginning of the movie, and then if we have to go that route with the children thing, then just explore what they're doing, training to be Jedis and whatnot. But like I said, I'd rather see a whole new batch of people. Like, my God, there's a few more people in the universe besides Skywalkers and whatnot. Imagination people.
Right, but it's Star Wars, so it has to be about those guys.
No, it does.
Well,
it does not.
Well, you'll be happy to know that they're not basing it on any of the existing Star Wars novels or what's known as the expanded universe. Because I don't know if you remember, but in the early 90s, they released the first follow-up Star Wars novels because for a long time, there was a moratorium on all the Star Wars books. I mean, after Jedi, there were no books released, for years. They just had those few that were released after Star Wars and a couple after Empire. Yeah, I had never read the early ones either, like Splinter of the Mind's Eye and Han Solo at World's End or whatever it was called. But I did read Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy, is what it became known as, and I really loved them. I mean, I just enjoyed the epic feel of it. I thought he really captured the space opera epicness of Star Wars, and he also introduced new characters. Like they had Admiral Thrawn, which was one of the he was supposed to be the last high ranking Imperial officer, and he gathered together all the remnants of the Empire to go and attack the New Republic and whatnot. But he had like this super genius mind, which was what made it great, because he was using strategy to defeat the New Empire, the New Republic rather.
Well, they probably
and he also
adapted the books. Like I said, I haven't read them, but I fully endorse them. Like I can imagine they're 10 times better than the prequels, and I myself am just a huge Knights of the Old Republic fan. Both games, 1 and 2, play them over and over and over. Can't get enough.
Those are great games.
And I wish they would base the movies like a new trilogy on those. I would love that. Totally love that.
Well, people are theorizing that that's what the TV series is going to be about. And the Old Republic is like 10,000 years before, the Star Wars trilogy stuff happened. So it's completely separate. Mm-hmm. But the Thrawn trilogy, I highly recommend that you check those out. I can't remember the names of any of them right now. Heir of the Empire, I think, and it's where it starts. But they're really good. I read those, and then I read the first 3 books in the Jedi Academy trilogy, which is where Luke starts his own academy and he starts training new Jedi and whatnot. And from there, it kind of went downhill. I could see what it was going to kind of evolve into, And even with the Thrawn trilogy, the entire thing is kind of a repeat of the Star Wars pattern, where there's this big, galaxy-threatening super weapon that the Republic has to go destroy at the end, like the Death Star. So I would be surprised if we see any kind of difference in the plot for Episode 7. They're going to still kind of follow that basic Star Wars pattern of going after that big galaxy weapon or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Last little bit of cool news before we close out this segment is, I don't know if you've ever watched it or not, Star Wars Clone Wars is up to season 6, and that's going to be the final season, but they are about to move it all to Netflix. So March 7th, they're going to debut on Netflix with the final season, and one episode is guaranteed to feature the return of Liam Neeson.
Mm-hmm.
That's Qui-Gon Jinn, obviously.
Yeah, I can't get excited about that. It's a little too childlike for me at this point.
The Clone Wars has its ups and downs. Perhaps we'll get into it a bit more in some favorite moments, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. So that's about it. That's pretty much, those are the facts of what we know. Okay. So there's not a lot to go on in terms of where the story's going to go or who's going to be featured the most, but at least all of the right pieces are in play as far as I'm concerned. So I'm excited. I can't wait for December 2015 to get here. I was thinking we would have nothing else to look forward to in terms of movies from here on out, at least in terms of good science fiction and whatnot. But so it's good to have Star Wars to look forward to again.
I'll be excited. Like it's hard. It would be hard to make a bad trailer for it. I mean, imagine with millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, which they'll have via Disney and whatnot. How can you possibly make a trailer that would make me not want to see it? I don't think that's possible. I mean, I'll even go see RoboCop, when we can leave the house again.
Right. Yeah. This episode could have been about RoboCop, but I tell you what, I'm so sick of mediocrity, man. I've had it. I mean, I had the revelation after watching the Evil Dead remake, which I liked. I mean, I liked it a lot, but it still had that inevitable redundancy of being a remake of something that didn't need to be remade, just like this RoboCop remake. I'm getting to the point where I just cannot get excited about too many more remakes because I want to see original ideas. I want to see something new. I want to see something that's going to excite me, or something like Star Wars that I love that's not original anymore, but it makes me happy regardless. But at least it's not a remake. I mean, my God, could you imagine if they remade A New Hope and they just called it Hope?
I don't really get upset about the remake thing anymore. I did when the trend first started back with I don't know when it started, but
it's been a while. I mean,
yeah, like I just remember around the time like the not original, Friday the 13th was remade. Around that time, I was hating on them and saying, I have no intention of watching any of these movies, and I haven't watched most of them. I only saw that Friday the 13th remake because it happened to come on TV when we had like free HBO for a while or something, and I saw it, and I liked it. It was actually pretty good. But what's my point here? I get it now. Like I know why they do it. It's not because they think they can make it better. It's because there's a new generation, younger people. They have a chance to make more money, and they do. They make money because the younger people are going to pay to see these movies, and it makes perfect sense. As long as you can differentiate that in your mind and realize they're not even trying to make it as good as the original or like the original, they're just using the title and making money, then there's no reason to get mad about it anymore. But you see, you spend a lot of time on all these online forums like you and I do. People just keep bashing it like they're just incredulous. They're just like so against it. And I'm against it. I mean, I wish they wouldn't do it, but I'm not going to say I'm not going to see certain ones, certain remakes.
It just depends on whether or not I get excited. I mean, I thought the trailer to the Evil Dead remake looked good, so I went and saw it. I enjoyed it. But, afterwards I was just left feeling like, yeah, it was okay,
Mm-hmm.
The Carrie remake came and went, and I never felt an ounce of an urge to go see it. But what bugs me is that we've been in this remake wave for so long. And I mean, remakes are nothing new. It's been going on forever. I mean, the Hammer films were remakes essentially of the Universal films, although they were really new adaptations of the old source material, but they were still in that remake vein. And then we had remakes in the 80s, stuff like The Thing, The Fly, The Blob, anything that started with a D. But in the new millennium, it's been a kind of an unending wave for the past 14 years, of remakes. And people, millennials that have grown up with this, they're starting to see it as a viable creative source where they're coming up with classic movies that should be remade. I'm seeing it every day on Facebook. Like people are like, oh, this movie's so awesome, they should remake it with such and such. Like, no, they shouldn't. Shut up. Go hang yourself in your closet tonight. If that's what you really think.
I may have to edit what I said earlier that it's not going to upset me anymore because now that you're mentioning it, I'm starting to get upsetting. The fact that the time frame between remakes is getting shorter and shorter, that pisses me off. That is unimaginative that they have to make Spider-Man 10 years apart. That does bother me.
That's nothing compared to Let the Right One In and Let Me In and what was the other one? The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I mean, there's like a year between the movies. They remade them for American audiences. It's like, what the heck? Make people read subtitles. They're good movies.
But like with Let the Right One In, that's an odd one. Like, I don't know how I feel about that because I like both of those movies, even though they were nearly identical. They were still different enough. I don't know. I just like both of them. It doesn't make a lot of sense why they did it, just because they could have them speaking English. That's not enough reason logically in my mind to remake a movie a year later or whatever it was.
Right.
But I have to say I liked both of them.
Yeah, well, I'll sum it up like this. I was having a conversation with my girlfriend, now my ex-girlfriend, and I was talking about how I like this old TV show, The Phoenix, and she goes, "That's such a cool idea. You should remake it. Write the script for it." And I was like, "Do you not know me? It's like, who do you think you're dating?" You know, I didn't say this to her, but I'm thinking it. I'm like, I don't do remakes. I'm trying to come up with something new. That's what this is about. Finding new forms of expression, not trying to find something from 20 years ago that nobody knows about and saying, "Oh, it's a great idea. Let me remake it." That's not what creativity is about. The artist has a responsibility, like the shaman of the tribe, to dive into the subconscious and to bring up gold, to bring up new diamonds of pure imagination that are heretofore unseen by the world. Because if we don't do it, we're going to get to the point where everything is a remake. Period. Nothing is new. No ideas will ever come forth. Everything will be a remake from here to the end of the time. And when that happens, you're going to find me hanging in my closet, dead.
It feels like that now. I know that's not really the case, but it does feel that way, that there's so many out there and coming out there. There's no end to it.
Perhaps that's why Star Wars struck such a chord with me at the time, although it felt like a familiar story because of kind of the mythological backbone and the archetypes at play. Mm-hmm. It felt like just such an original take and such an original approach. And despite, you know, the sci-fi purists like Harlan Ellison that might hate it because they use sound in space or whatever, it was just such an exciting and engaging spectacle. It continues to serve as a source of inspiration for me, and it's something that inspires me to try to come up with something new. And for that, I'll be forever grateful.
You know how I kind of, what's the word? Well, how I deal with sound in space in my Spock-like analytical mind.
No.
This is how I have to justify it. And I'm surely I'm not the only one, but I've never really talked about this. I'm just imagining that's what the pilot is hearing. That he can hear the engines inside the spacecraft and maybe even the lasers firing. That's the only way I can accept it. So.
Well, you know, that's actually the approach that they used for the novels, was that the ships had their own atmosphere so that the pilots inside would hear those, hear that. So that's how they explained it in the novels. All right, Ty Britt. Okay. Unless you have something else to say about the upcoming episode 7, we better bring this intro to a close so we can move on to our favorite moments, favorite movies, favorite characters.
No, we're good. Let's go.
Okay, all right. All right, mutants, stick around. I'm going to play some fun Star Wars clips, Star Wars-related clips for you. And we'll be back to talk about some of our favorite Jedi and Sith moments right here on MVP Mutant Radio.
Do you remember your first time? The first time you fell in love with horror. Science fiction. Post-apocalyptic fantasies. MVP Mutant Radio will help you rediscover your inner fan again as we talk you through the latest and greatest theatrical releases in horror.
You're all going to die tonight.
We can guide you to a new, better, happier you.
Science fiction.
Prometheus, are you seeing this?
Big things have small beginnings.
Mama is not the law. I am the law.
And all-out badassery. We'll bring you interviews with independent filmmaking masterminds, as well as specials like Murder by Music and the Drunken New Year's Eve Mega Show. Listen online at www.mutantville.com or subscribe on iTunes.
If you're a man, you don't cry about it. You take life, the ups and downs. If you're a real man, you never go down, you just stay up.
The Mutantville players are ready to lead the art jihad against haterism and the forces of fandom.
Somewhere in space, this may all be happening right now. 20th Century Fox and George Lucas, the man who brought you American Graffiti, now bring you an adventure unlike anything on your planet. Star Wars.
Here they come. Coming in too fast!
The story of a boy, a girl, and a universe. It's a big, sprawling space saga of rebellion and romance. It's a spectacle, light years ahead of its time.
I am C-3PO, human cyborg relations, and this is my counterpart, R2-D2.
Hello.
It's an epic of heroes.
Good luck.
And villains. And aliens from 1,000 worlds. Years in the making. Star Wars.
Hold on to the counter and I'll pull.
Usually, I just turn the can upside down.
Maybe we ought to soap your hand up.
They ought to put a warning on these things, like they do with cigarettes.
Oh, I think it's coming.
Oh, thanks. I thought I was going to have to go to the hospital.
I'll throw this out as a precautionary measure.
It stings a little.
A little word of advice, my friend. Sometimes you gotta let those hard-to-reach chips go.
Thanks.
You know, that article's accurate. Caitlin really is getting married.
You know what I just watched?
Me pulling a can off some moron's fist?
Return of the Jedi.
Didn't you hear me? Caitlin is really getting married.
What did you like better, Jedi or The Empire Strikes Back?
Empire.
Blasphemy.
Empire had the better ending. I mean, Luke gets his hand cut off, finds out Vader's his father, hand gets frozen and taken away by Boba Fett. It ends on such a down note. I mean, that's what life is, a series of down endings. All Jedi had was a bunch of Muppets.
There was something else going on in Jedi. I never noticed it till today. They built another Death Star, right?
Yeah.
Now, the first one was completed and fully operational before the Rebels destroyed it.
Luke blew it up. Give credit where credit's due.
And the second one was still being built when they blew it up.
Compliments of Lando Calrissian.
Something just never sat right with me that second time around. I could never put my finger on it, but something just wasn't right.
And you figured it out.
The first Death Star was manned by the Imperial Army. The only people on board were stormtroopers, dignitaries, Imperials.
Basically.
So when they blew it up, no problem. Evil's punished.
And the second time around?
The second time around, it wasn't even done being built yet. It was still under construction.
So?
So a construction job of that magnitude would require a hell of a lot more manpower than the Imperial Army had to offer. I'll bet they brought independent contractors in on that thing. Plumbers, aluminum siders, roofers.
Not just Imperials. Is that what you're getting at?
Exactly. In order to get it built quickly and quietly, they'd hire anybody that can do the job. Think the average stormtrooper knows how to install a toilet main? All they know is killing in white uniforms.
All right, so they bring in independent contractors. Why are you so upset at its destruction?
All those innocent contractors brought in to do the job were killed. Casualties of a war they had nothing to do with. All right, look, you're a roofer. Some juicy government contract comes your way. You got a wife and kids, the 2-story in suburbia. This is a government contract, which means all sorts of benefits. Along come these left-wing militants and blast everything within a 3-mile radius with their lasers. You didn't ask for that. You have no personal politics. You're just trying to scrape out a living.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but what are you talking about?
The ending of Return of the Jedi.
My friend here is trying to convince me that any independent contractors who were working on the uncompleted Death Star were innocent victims when they was destroyed by the rebels.
Well, I'm a contractor myself. I'm a roofer. Done and ready, home improvements. And speaking as a roofer, I can tell you a roofer's personal politics comes into play heavily when choosing jobs.
Like when?
3 weeks ago, I was offered a job up in the hills. Beautiful house, tons of property, a simple reshingling job. They told me if I could finish it in 1 day, I would double my price. Then I realized whose house it was.
Whose house was it?
Dominic Bambino's.
Babyface Bambino? The gangster?
The same. The money was right, but the risk was too high. I knew who he was, and based on that, I turned the job over to a friend of mine.
Based on personal politics.
Right, and the next week, the Foresi family put a hit on Babyface's house. My friend was shot and killed. Didn't even finish reshingling.
No way.
I'm alive because I knew the risk involved in that particular client. My friend wasn't so lucky. Any contractor working on that Death Star knew the risk involved. If they got killed, it's their own fault. A roofer listens to this, not his wallet.
Remember Hank Aaron? He hit 714. This is the ball he hit it with. Yeah, I know Garbeck hit 4,000, but he had a laser bat. This man hit it with a piece of wood. And what the hell you know about it? Your brain's about to fall out your head. Listen, hold it. Yeah, Starbuck. It must be for you. You said the ugliest? Yeah, your wife wants you to come home. He said, with the water, with the water. Okay. She said, water, go to water, get it, water, get it, water, get it. A double? You got it. You in love? That's all right. Take it easy. Take it easy. Take it easy. Here. Hey. Did you get on that hairdo? Hey, excuse me. I told you don't touch me. I don't give a damn what you're doing. Don't touch me. Oh, fun. One to go. Fun. Fuzz, you got to clean out one of them eyes. Hey! Hey, ain't no dancing lot. You look just like a nigga from Detroit, I know. There ain't no dancing lot in here. Oh, I see. Well, why don't y'all go upstairs and get a room? Oh, show them upstairs. That's your type. You all right? You got a lot of heart, you know that? Hey, why don't you watch where you're going? You got the biggest eyes in the place. You see that? That was the devil, right? I know the devil when I see it. You cheating! Wait on it! You did it twice over here! You did it! Hold it! You hold it! Set it! Boss! They're about to suck me to death! Take him in the back room! While you're back there, get your little octopus.
And now for our feature presentation.
You are about to witness the power of the RGR. The battle for the omnidimensional souls of humanity has begun. Put away your false idol and bow down to the power of the MVP Mandala Chamber. You must prepare yourself if you wish to become a Mutantville player.
The force is strong in this one. We're talking Star Wars and Star Wars Episode 7 on MVP Mutant Radio. Of course, this is your host Strebo, and with me as always
is Megatod.
And we're talking all things Jedi and Sith today. And we're going to run down our favorite movies from the entire series, some of our favorite characters, and our favorite moments. So this should make for some interesting discussion, Tade Britt. Would you like to go on your favorite three movies? You want to start with number 3, count down to number 1?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I'll go with, it's not going to be any surprise at all. Return of the Jedi, and then Empire Strikes Back, and then A New Hope, Episode 4.
Well, you know what? You would probably not be surprised to find out that's my exact order as well. Return of the Jedi at 3, Empire Strikes Back at 2, and Star Wars, to heck with calling it A New Hope. Star Wars, that's what it was when it was released. Number 1 as just the greatest. You know, when we had our top 5 sci-fi films of all time discussion, when Phil Kay and I broke them down, I revealed Star Wars as being my favorite science fiction film of all time, and I thought that it was probably the most important science fiction film of all time. And its effects on both sci-fi and filmmaking and the way that films are, the tempo with which films are released now are still felt to this day. I mean, there's a very clear demarcation point between all sci-fi that was before Star Wars and everything that came after. Because everything since 1968 was influenced by 2001, you know, so you had that whole string of kind of artsy-fartsy, highbrow science fiction films like Logan's Run or Soylent Green or whatnot. But then it was when Star Wars came around and they brought the space opera elements back to it and they added the fantasy to it. You know, it was what kind of kick-started everything to a new level and started the modern era of science fiction filmmaking and just films in general.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, I was going to mention the space opera thing too, how Lucas doesn't even consider it sci-fi, which is fine. You know, it makes sense. But it's funny, a guy like me, and I'm not the only one, can love those Star Trek universe and Star Wars pretty much equally, even then they're not at all the same. Very big differences there. They both have spaceships and they explore, which is the main thing for me in both universes. But I don't know. I like them both equally.
Well, when we talked about the original Star Trek series, you didn't have much to say in terms of how much you liked it. I mean, what do you like? Do you just like the movies? You didn't like the original TV show, or what?
Oh, I'm a huge fan of the original series.
Okay.
I've seen them all numerous times. And I like the movies up through 4.
6 was a good return to form, the Forbidden Country.
See, none of them had enough impact on me that I get the storylines confused after 4. Like, I can't even remember what happened in each one from there on.
Yeah, the Star Trek movies kind of brought me my sci-fi fix after Star Wars ended, because Star Trek 2, I think, had come out after Empire, a couple years after Empire, but it was right before Jedi. So then Jedi came and went, and we knew there weren't going to be more Star Wars films for quite a while. And then we had, Star Trek 3, 4, 5, and 6 all the way up into the early 90s. So that kind of kept my theatrical sci-fi fix going. So I always love it for that. But we don't want to get off on too much of a Star Trek tangent there. So, all right, let's reel it back into favorite characters. Who are your top 3 Star Wars characters?
Okay, well, like I said earlier, I didn't prepare for this, but I'm going to say Darth Vader and Yoda, and gosh, I don't know. There's so many I'm probably not even going to think of. You might have to.
Number one now.
I like Qui-Gon. Definitely, and I like Darth Maul, even though he wasn't much of a character. I mean, he was a badass Sith, but
right.
We didn't really know anything about him. He didn't have much to say, but yeah, we'll go with Qui-Gon for that spot for now.
Okay, well, good selection. I'll give you my top 3. Number 3, Boba Fett, greatest bounty hunter of all time, Todd A. Britt.
Yeah, I was afraid of that.
He's just an awesome character, man.
Yeah.
My fascination with Fett started before Empire was ever released, because I don't know if you remember this, but Boba Fett was the first action figure that wasn't featured in Star Wars in Episode 4. Okay? He was actually an advanced figure from Empire because he appeared in the Star Wars Holiday Special. He's in the cartoon segment in the Star Wars Holiday Special, which aired in 78.
I think people like you have built this myth in your minds about why he's supposed to be cool, because there's nothing in the movies that makes him cool.
He just stands around looking cool. Yeah, if you kind of think about it, he never does anything. He never actually shoots anybody, but he just kind of totes Han around. He takes him at the end of the movie.
He kind of died like a chump in Return of the Jedi. Like a kind of a comical Charlie Chaplin way. When he gets his jetpack cut in half or something and then just falls in a pit.
Yeah, that was pretty lame. They actually followed that up with the comic books in Dark Empire, and they said that he had survived, and he just kind of blasted his way out. Because he's in armor and whatnot. I mean, he just lands in there. Of course, he could survive. So he makes his way out later, and he eventually comes back after Luke and Han for revenge and whatnot.
I bet Lucas wouldn't agree with that. I bet he said, nope, he died. That's what I intended.
Well, the expanded universe, all the plot lines had to be approved by Lucasfilm. They actually had somebody that was dedicated to maintaining the continuity. And this is one of the things about Episode 7 is that expanded universe was supposed to be part of continuity, and everything except for the Marvel comics, which were published concurrent with the original trilogy, because the actual first couple issues came out before the movie even came out, the original movie. Everything but
that. I remember seeing those, and I never bought them.
I've got a bunch of them if you ever want to check them out. But so everything but those Marvel comics, which continued for like a year or two after Return of the Jedi, so they continued the story a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Everything but those comics was supposed to be considered canon, but now with Episode 7 coming out, they're throwing all that out the window. They're saying, okay, none of it matters. This is a totally fresh slate here. That means you won't necessarily see anything from the Thrawn trilogy. You won't see Admiral Thrawn. You won't see Mara Jade, who was actually a Sith assassin that goes to fight Luke, and they end up getting married and whatnot. So it's really cool, little storyline there. But all that stuff is now, not considered canon.
I don't
that's
like
kind of
that.
sad.
Yeah, like I said, I haven't read the comic books, I haven't read the novels, but I would probably like a lot of that stuff. So that sounds like a bad thing that you're telling me, that they're just pretending that didn't happen. I don't like that. But.
Yeah, well, I guess they're doing it to make some wiggle room, because once they got past the Thrawn trilogy and they got into the Jedi Academy and the Han and Leia kids, growing up, things just went totally crazy. So it's best to probably just start over with all that and break away from it so people can be excited and surprised again. We should get back to my character count now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Number two, Han Solo, the man,
yep,
who for the longest time was my number one favorite character. Just because he's so badass and laissez-faire in Episode 1, in Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
Shooting Greedo and everything, and his
it's so reluctant,
his pimp moves on Leia and stuff, and he's like, oh yeah, I know you love me, yeah, it's just great stuff.
That's just the exact, perfect movie character that people love. Just the reluctant hero, the sleazeball that does the turnaround and comes back at the end to save everybody's ass,
Right. And number one, Luke Skywalker. I did not like him in Star Wars in Episode 4 originally, but it was Empire and Jedi that made me love Luke, because he started to develop as a Jedi, and I was like, oh man, it's awesome, because I love the whole everything about the Jedi Order and the whole mystical approach to the Force and just everything. It's always appealed to me. It's probably one of the things that inspired me to want to get into martial arts and study Zen and Buddhism and all that kind of stuff, So Luke has just always been one of my favorite characters.
I agree. I can't fault you for that. He had a nice arc over the 3 movies that showed a realistic progression. And I mean, he when he comes in at the beginning of Return of the Jedi, he's like a real badass with the black outfit and the black glove, and he's throwing shit around, choking people, whatever.
Right. Well, that should bring us into our favorite moments. Do you want to count down your favorite moments, or do you want me to do mine?
Yeah, go ahead and do yours.
Number 3, the Cantina Brawl from Star Wars, Episode 4.
Yep.
That was my favorite scene in the first movie. I loved everything about it. The way the guys, Snaggletooth and the other guy, are picking on Luke. And if you ever want to know more about those characters, I recommend picking up the old Star Wars role-playing game. Because like I said, Lucasfilm policed the continuity for everything, okay? So when they broke all those characters down, they gave everybody in the cantina a name, a history, all that kind of stuff. Like that guy was like some kind of mass serial killer. The guy that picks on Luke, he's like, hey, he doesn't like you. That dude was like a crazy bad serial killer. So it's pretty interesting. I always love the part. And Obi-Wan just whips out his lightsaber and chops his arm off, and everybody's like, okay, that was cool. All the way up to the scene where, Han's sitting there talking to Greedo, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I bet you have." Boom! Shoots him under the table because Han shot first. Darn it!
I don't blame him. Greedo was pretty creepy looking.
Yeah, and what's extra creepy is when you know that behind the scenes, Greedo was played by a woman who was wearing like pink high heels at the time. So if you see his feet under the table, that's what he was wearing. Yeah, it's out there somewhere. Okay, number 2, Luke versus Vader at the end of Empire. It was when Luke thought he was he was the Jedi, goes in and to save his friends, confronts Vader. Vader puts a beat down on him.
He gave him a lesson in lightsaber dueling, didn't he?
Dueling and the Force and everything, because he's sitting there dueling him with sabers, and he starts throwing stuff at him. Luke's like, "Oh,
I'm distracted."
You know, it's just classic, and it all leads up to that classic moment of Luke, I am your father, and he's like, "No!" Although this girl sitting next to me in 5th grade English class ruined it because she got to go see it the day before me, and she's like, "Vader is Luke's father." I'm like, "No, he's not. Shut up." She's like, "Yes, he is."
You did the Luke. No.
Yeah, I was going, "No."
It's not true.
Yeah, that's impossible.
I think somebody actually did that. I thought it was a repressed memory. I think somebody told me too. It didn't ruin it for me though, because I guess I didn't
probably
believe it.
Loudmouth girl. Yeah,
I didn't believe it, so it was still a surprise. Yeah. Okay,
and that brings us up to my number 1 favorite moment: Return of the Jedi. Luke at Jabba's palace. That's Luke's ascension to Jedihood. Where here we have Jabba established as the baddest, criminal mastermind on Tatooine, and Luke walks essentially unarmed because he doesn't have his saber with him. Walks in the front door and just starts taking names. They got the Gamorrean guards that like cross their axes in front of him. He's like, "Ha, force choke, get out of my way, respect." And he does. No, he didn't bring. He came in unarmed. Remember, he put his lightsaber in R2.
Yes. Yep, you're right. Forgot.
Yep. So he comes in unarmed. Then Bib Fortuna tries to head him off, and he uses a little Jedi mind trick on him, and then he just goes in and he talks down Jabba and his entire crew. And he's like, "Well, listen, if you don't side with me, you're going to be destroyed." And he force pulls that guy's gun and tries to shoot Jabba and stuff. I mean, man, that was cold blooded. He's like, "I'm just going to shoot you."
He just didn't see the old trapdoor trick coming.
Yeah.
That's what.
But I love that whole sequence all the way up from there to the battle at the Sarlacc pit where he gets his lightsaber and they have all the major duel and everything. The only thing that would have made it better is if he'd have been the one to take out Boba Fett. I always wanted to see that. Just chop his head off.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my top 3 moments. I've got a couple more bonus moments, some from the expanded universe that I'm going to throw out. But do you have any others you'd like to add?
Definitely like your choices, and I'll add the triple duel with Darth Maul, and Obi, and
Episode 1.
Yeah, Qui-Gon. That was a treat. What else? Trash compactor sequence was really tense.
Good scene.
Lots of good yelling on Mark Hamill's part. "No, shut them all down." He was really, really into that. That was some good acting there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't think of anything else right now.
Okay, I'll throw out a couple bonus ones. Since you mentioned the duel of the fates at the end of episode 1, one of my favorite moments is actually from episode 2, the Battle of Geonosis. I love that sequence when the Jedi reveal themselves in the stadium. When Anakin and Obi-Wan and
the
Prince. I started to call her Leia. I can't even remember her name at this point, but And then all the Jedi reveal themselves in the stadium because you just see all these lightsabers just igniting throughout the whole stadium. And this was what I always wanted to see from the Clone Wars, was just waves of Jedi, battling enemies. And that whole end battle in Episode 2, I think, is the greatest moment of the entire prequel trilogy. I just totally love it.
It wasn't,
and the duel with Dooku was awesome too. When Anakin and
for that had more impact for me. But the big, the big battle on Genesis was like not enough. It was too late. Like I already hated the movie by that point, so I just
right.
it couldn't redeem it. I don't know.
That's too funny. I liked Episode 2 more than Episode 1, actually, because I really liked the duel with Jango Fett. I loved the duel that Obi-Wan had with Jango, and I thought the opening of the movie was a lot of fun.
I did like, what's that? What's the water planet? Kamino? Something.
Yeah, I think it's Kamino. Yeah, something like that.
I like that. I like that whole sequence with Jango. Oddly, I thought he was cooler than his little goofball son.
Well, it's actually not his son. It's a young clone of him. Yeah. That was the thing that I hated about the Clone Wars. It's like, what? It's all one guy? That's stupid. I thought it was going to be, everybody was being cloned, and they were just crazy, and you don't know who's cloned and who's not. But it's all just one guy. I was like, whatever.
Yeah. I like that atmosphere of, with the rain, and it was dark and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a fun duel. Okay, I'm going to throw out a couple more moments. The return of Darth Maul from the end of Season 4 of the Clone Wars, which you said you haven't watched any of them. These are the episodes I recommend you watch. It's like the last 2 episodes of Season 4 and the first episode of Season 5, because they feature the return of Darth Maul. His brother, Savage Opress, goes searching for him. He winds up finding him. He gets this little amulet from these Sith witches that allows him to track him down. And what happened was after
find him, he
fell into that reactor, right? But he survived, and he used the force. He used the force to pull all these mechanical parts to him to help hold the bottom half of his body together. And it's really cool because he uses the force to assemble it, and it takes on like this spider-like shape. But because he was so badly wounded, he kind of goes insane. So when they find him, he's all like, and he's all crazy and stuff, and it's really cool. And his brother has to help calm him down and kind of bring him back to sanity. And then, of course, what's the first thing they do? They go after Obi-Wan to get revenge. So it's really cool. I really enjoyed it, and I recommend you check it out. It's actually they released it on its own, apart from the series. It's called The Return of Darth Maul, but they re-edited it, so it plays as a feature instead of the individual episodes. But they took some parts of it out. Like they actually took the parts of him being all crazy out of the single version. You can only see that in the individual episodes, and I think that actually kind of hurts the overall product of that particular set. But
I'll likely never see it. I just don't like their drawing or animation style. It's just, it's so not appealing to me.
I'm not a huge fan of it, so yeah, I know what you mean. But that particular story, I really, really dug.
Plus, I can't buy him coming back from that. I mean, if that's the case, then Qui-Gon should have easily been resurrected.
Right, he just got stabbed through the gut, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maul is that weird. He's a weird alien species or whatever, but it's cool. It worked for me. I really like that storyline. I'll throw out another one from the Star Wars Expanded Universe. And this is from the original Marvel comic book series, issue number 71. On the cover, it's got a picture of Luke standing next to Lando Calrissian in front of a carbon-frozen figure, and it says, "The search for Han Solo ends here." This was released probably a year before Return of the Jedi, because, as I said, the Marvel Star Wars comics were released concurrently with the movies. So at the end of Empire, they picked right up, and Luke and Lando went looking for Han. So they had like this year or 2 long storyline. So it of them tracking down these bounty hunters and tracking them down. And then finally in this episode, they track down the bounty hunters and they corner these bounty hunters, and it's like IG-88 and Bosk and a couple of those guys, you know, from Empire. And they fight their way in, they get in there with the carbon figure, and they make their way to it, and it's actually this guy Chiodo, who's a Greedo guy, and they're like, this isn't Han, what? They're like, no, it's not Han, because of course, you know, that was, you know, resolved in Return of the Jedi, so they couldn't really resolve it in the comic book. But it was great because they spent so long tracking him down and fighting all these bounty hunters. So you got to see them actually fight all those cool bounty hunters that appeared in Empire Strikes Back. And it just made for a really fun storyline. And this was pre-Jedi, so it was Luke, you know, coming into all of his Jedi powers and whatnot. And it was a lot of fun. It made for a fun story.
Okay, I'll take your word for that too.
Okay, cool. Well, like I said, I have a stack of them. If you ever want to read them, I'll be happy to loan them to you, so you can check them out.
Okay.
All right, well, let's bring this portion of the MVP Mandala Chamber to a close, and we'll be right back to close out the show very quickly because we've gone on much too long already. With MVP Game, we'll give out some filmmaking advice, some artistic advice for our fellow artists out there on this road of life, pursuing that ever evasive goal of creating something original. Right here on MVP Mutant Radio.
Do you still believe in horror, exploitation, sleaze and cheese, and all that goes with it? If so, come check out Behind the Mask podcast. And if you don't believe, we'll make you believe.
Check out your ultimate guide to movies, music, and nostalgia at BehindTheMaskPresents.com.
You weren't there at the beginning. You don't know how good it was, how important. This is it for you, this jumped-up firework display of a toy advert. People like you make me sick. What's wrong with you? Now, I don't care if you've saved up all your 50p's, okay? Take your pocket money and get out! What a prick.
Tim, can I have a word with you in my office?
Yes.
Have a seat, Tim. Twiglet?
I better not.
I was like you once. Blonde hair, scraggy little beard, childlike ears, full of beans and spunk. I let my principles get in the way sometimes. I punched a bloke in the face once for saying Hawk the Slayer was rubbish.
Good for you.
Yeah, thanks. But that's not the point, Tim. The point is, I was defending the fantasy genre with terminal intensity, when what I should have said is, Dad, you're right. But let's give Krull a try, and we'll discuss it later. The Phantom Menace was 18 months ago, Tim.
I know, Bilbo. Okay, it still hurts. You know, that kid wanted a Jar Jar doll.
Kids like Jar Jar.
Why?
What about the Ewoks? Hey? They were rubbish. You don't complain about them.
Yeah, but Jar Jar Binks makes the Ewoks look like fucking Shaft.
I've had enough, Tim.
But Bilbo...
Look, I know how you feel, right? I really do. But this can't go on.
What are you trying to say, Bilbo?
I'm going to have to let you go.
Phew! I thought you were going to fire me then. I was like, phew. Look at that.
It is over, sister. No one remains. This is all my fault.
He is close. Something is rising. Something sinister. Is that you, brother?
Master Yoda?
Fear you are in danger. I do.
from the dead. An old enemy has awakened, seeking vengeance.
The time has come. Become a true knight. Scatter!
Always remember I am fear. Always remember I am hunter. Jedi!
It is you.
This world will burn.
Prepare yourselves, sisters!
His capture is far too important.
I have been waiting, fueled by my singular hatred for you.
So evil.
Little Ewoks. An entire empire brought to its knees by small, furry creatures.
That's my point exactly.
Leave him alone.
Brian, did you notice that everything that transpired in those 3 films, and I mean everything, can be attributed to the actions of one very minor character?
Who?
The gunner on the Star Destroyer at the beginning of the first film.
How come?
Well, because if the gunner had shot the pod that C-3PO and R2 were in, they wouldn't have got to Tatooine, they wouldn't have met Luke, Luke wouldn't have met Ben, they wouldn't have met Han and Chewie, they wouldn't have rescued Princess Leia. None of it would have happened.
Chaos theory.
Eh?
The predictability of random events. The notion that reality as we know it, past, present, future, is in fact a mathematically predictable, preordained system.
So somewhere out there in the vastness of the unknown is an equation for predicting the future.
An equation so complex as to utterly defy any possibility of comprehension by even the most brilliant human mind. But an equation nonetheless.
Oh my God.
What?
I've got some fucking Jaffa cakes in my coat pocket.
Oh, Mama! Oh, Daddy, let's all play kabaddi.
Until this battle station is fully operational, we are vulnerable. The Rebel Alliance is too well equipped. They're more dangerous than you realize.
Dangerous to your Starfleet, Commander, not to this battle station.
The Rebellion will continue to gain us support in the Imperial Senate.
The Imperial Senate will no longer be of any concern to us. I have just received word that the Emperor has dissolved the Council permanently. The last remnants of the old Republic have been swept away.
It's impossible. How will the Emperor maintain control without the bureaucracy?
The regional governors now have direct control over their territories. Fear will keep the local systems in line. Fear of this battle station.
And what of the Rebellion? If the rebels have obtained a complete technical readout of this station, it is possible, however unlikely, that they might find a weakness and exploit it.
The plans you refer to will soon be back in our hands.
Any attack made by the rebels against this station would be a useless gesture, no matter what technical data they've obtained. This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed. The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant next to the power of the Force.
Don't try to frighten us with your sorcerer's ways, Lord Vader. Your sad devotion to that ancient religion has not helped you conjure up the stolen data tapes, or given you clairvoyance enough to find the rebels' hidden fort.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Enough of this. Vader, release him.
As you wish.
This bickering is pointless. Now, Lord Vader will provide us with the location of the rebel fortress by the time this station is operational. We will then crush the rebellion with one swift stroke.
Time to play the game! The game! The game! What's to play the game? The game! The game! It's all about the game! The game! The game! Time to play the game! The game! The game! It's the only thing better than Scream Forever! The game! The game! The game! Let's play or die!
Coming at you like an Archie hat for your brain. It's MVP Mutant Radio.
It's all about the game, my mutant children. Welcome back. It's time for MVP Game. This is your host, Strebo, and with me
is Megatod. Still.
We're going to throw out a little bit of advice for you, our fellow artists out there, our fellow travelers on this crazy, crazy road of artistic endeavors. One that's probably simultaneously the most rewarding endeavor and the least rewarding, because you sacrifice so much of your life for people that have no appreciation for it. But the great thing is that the art is its own reward. So you have that feeling of satisfaction that no one else can have unless they've actually created something unique and original. Which brings us to my advice for today. Since we're talking about Star Wars, Star Wars is one of the most prominently mimicked series and one of the most filmed subjects in fandom. And for years, Lucas just allowed fans to work with the mythology and make their own fan films. As long as they weren't selling them, they could put them out there, and they encouraged it, you know. And people have made countless numbers of Star Wars fan films over the years. Most of them are horrible. Here at MVP, Johnny Brento once made several of us, though I managed to miss that shoot somehow, made several of us make a Star Wars fan film of our own, which involved a Jedi walking through the woods and being shot at by some kind of Boba Fett character, and then there's some kind of duel, and then it's all over. But anyway, I think I was working or sick or something, in a coma that weekend, so I wasn't able to help.
Nor did I.
But once I saw we were going down that road of fan filmmaking, that was really the impetus for me to say, let's go beyond this, guys. Let's, instead of wasting so much time and energy making a fan film for something we don't own, for something we can't monetize, let's make something original, which is where C for Chaos came from. And, you know, whether or not you think that project itself was a success, it led to everything else that we've done and completed and put out there. And thankfully, at least now we're putting out the C for Chaos web series, and hopefully it will see completion through that. But my advice to you all is, no matter how much you love something, whether it's Star Wars or John Carpenter's Halloween or Friday the 13th or Resident Evil or Halo or the Mario Brothers, whatever it is, don't make a fan film. If you are serious about being an artist, about living as an artist, which means producing as an artist, don't make a fan film. Period. The end. It's a waste of time, waste of energy, waste of resources, waste of imagination. When you should be, let me finish my spiel right quick. When you should be putting that energy into coming up with something new. Something new. We need that new idea out there, whether it's horror films with Night of the Living Dead, whether it's science fiction with Star Wars. We have to have those new paradigm-shifting stories that come out and excite everyone and reignite a generation and change things from that moment forward and put a line in the sand. And you cannot get that if all you are doing is aspiring to make something that somebody else has already made. And in that endeavor, you have failed 100% as an artist. You have failed because you are not willing to take up the torch, to dive into the subconscious, to dive into the darkness and find what has heretofore been unseen on the face of the earth. And only the truly courageous are willing to take up that call. What were you going to say, Todd?
I will play counterpoint to this. Like, I get what you're saying, and I remember you saying the same thing years ago when Brent was into that, or you know, when he was around the time he was making that fan film, and I have to say, I can see some value in it if you're just starting out, which actually I think he was a bit beyond starting out at that point. But not just to talk about him. I mean, there's many people who make way more, like spend way more money and do numerous movies. If you take it to that degree, if that's your life, like I don't get the whole cosplay thing. That's my idea of taking stuff too far. And I don't hate these people. And I see them at all the conventions, and I think it's cool. I love that they have the ability to make costumes and all that. But I don't really see the point in it. But anyway, my point of making fan films is it can help you work out the kinks, improve your skills, all your skills at filmmaking, whether that's editing or visual effects. You can kind of get better at it just by doing these little projects. So that's the main advocate for doing that. But you can take it too far, like I said, and then you get bogged down, and it's kind of all you ever do, and you don't make any money doing it.
Right. That's really the only value it has, is in helping you, hone and perfect your craft, to just practice it. But the problem is that afterwards, it's like, what do you do with it? It doesn't lead to jobs. You're not going to get, nobody's going to call you to direct episode 7 because you did this nice little Star Wars fan film. If that was the case, the guy that made Batman Dead End, which featured Batman the Joker fighting Alien and Predator, he would have directed the Nolan Batman trilogy, and that didn't happen, did it? I mean, that Nolan's Batman trilogy moved right on without that guy. So,
but
it just shows it's a colossal waste of time, but it's also a failure on the part of the artist. As I said, we have a responsibility to find something new, or else we're resigning the rest of the world to remake them forever. It's just a matter of, well, let's find a great story that's already been told and just update it. And that's it. And there's no new ideas, Todd. Can you imagine living in that kind of world? It would depress me. I would have to kill myself. I couldn't take it.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't take it.
Yeah.
So don't do it, kids. You have a responsibility to make something new. If Star Wars excites you, if you love it, if you want to homage it, if you want to pay tribute to it, then come up with something new. I mean, that was essentially what I did with C for Chaos. As I said at the beginning of the show, it was very Star Wars informed, but, it's in a comic book shop. It's in our world. It involves a serial killer, It's not Star Wars. It's at least an attempt to do something new, but it follows the same kind of monomyth archetypes and patterns and motifs and whatnot. Make something new. That's what we're here for. That is what it's all about. Because when Star Wars came along, it was new and exciting, and that's how it changed cinema. And that's the only way you can change things. Just like in the theme song on the show, one of the theme songs that I play, it takes something new to change the world. That's the lyric. You tell me that it's just a remake? Well, it takes something new to change the world. There you go. If you want to work on remakes, go ahead, guys. But you're not going to change anything doing it. Not going to change a thing. If you're a serious artist, take that inspiration, dive into your subconscious. I mean, that's the scary part, dude. People, we see a lot in MVP. I won't name any names, but, people want to do 1, 2, maybe 3 passes on a script and be done with it, when they should be open to doing infinite passes on the script and getting it right. Yeah. The hardest, scariest part is looking at a blank page and making it come to life and putting something on it. And with Blue Harvest 23, the script I've been working on, it's been almost a year and a half, and you haven't heard a peep out of me. That's all I've been doing is working on it, getting it right. And once it's perfected, I can come out of the cave and hold it up and say, here it is. Let's go. Let's go. But I'm putting the time into it now. I'm taking that time. I'm making the effort. I'm taking up the challenge of trying to find new expressions, new avenues. What were you going to say there?
I was going to say, do you think anyone will ever remake a David Lynch film, with the exception of Dune? Do you think
Elephant Man, maybe?
Yeah. But what about Blue Velvet? You think anybody would ever? No. Right. I don't think so either.
They're so unique. They couldn't. I mean, if they were remade, it would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, Ryan Gosling's in Blue Velvet, and it would just be a straightforward crime story or something. You know, and Benedict Cumberbatch's. You know, he takes on Dennis Hopper's role. You know,
that's true originality for me. And that's as original as it gets. So I don't think it's possible to remake something that original and unique.
Right. Yeah, those are really wonderful, surreal stories, and that's one thing I really dig about David Lynch's work, and guys like Cronenberg and Del Toro has a little piece of it. Takashi Miike, I know you hate Japanese and everything, but he's like the Japanese David Lynch and David Cronenberg. His stuff is really crazy, so definitely worth checking out. But it's funny, you know, I'm excited about episode 7, man, because we've had a long wait. You know, we had, after Empire, you know, we had those horrible Ewok adventure movies like in 84 and 85, and they were awful. I was so excited to watch them. They played on TV, you know, and they had no Jedi in them, no Sith. They had Ewoks, the worst element of Return of the Jedi. It all featured Ewoks, and we had to sit through those.
Well, if we pretend that the prequels didn't exist, which there's lots of people who do that, then we really had a long wait.
Yeah, and on TV it's just been horrible. You know, after the Battle for Endor, which was the final Ewok movie, they did that Star Wars Droids comic series, cartoon series, which was awful. They did the Star Wars Ewoks cartoon series, which was awful. Star Wars Clone Wars has been a mixed blessing, I think. I really actually preferred the original series when they had Gennady Tartakovsky that did it, because those were a lot of fun. I don't know if you saw those. They were like the 3-minute episodes, you know, and they just kind of played in between shows on Cartoon Network.
Yeah.
Those were a lot of fun. Well, they threw them out of continuity when they redid the Star Wars Clone Wars, where they released the first 3 episodes as a movie or what have you, but whatever. But, you know, so it's been a long, long road, man. We deserve to get some good new Star Wars action. I'm excited for episode 7.
I wanted to go back to an adult story, like the first 2 movies, and it definitely started to go towards Sesame Street with Return of the Jedi. It had those elements. It didn't ruin it, but it came close, and then it just went full on with starting with episode 1 with Jar Jar and that whole thing. So yeah, surely to God they'll, go opposite in the opposite direction. I mean, J.J. Abrams can't be so insulated that he doesn't know how much people hate Jar Jar and that whole
right. Right.
I mean, Lucas must be that insulated.
Well, he's not. I mean, apparently he got the message, and he's like, forget it, I'm done with it.
10 years, he got it, I guess.
But that's the way it has to go sometimes. All right, Todd A. Britt, Special Makeup Effects Illusionist. Thank you for joining me, sir. We'll just remind everybody, if they want to meet you, they can meet you at the upcoming Mad Monster Party on March 21st, 22nd, 23rd. You will be there whoring your wares shamelessly. We will be screening both Buddy Row and episode 2 of Mutish's Movie Morgue.
I'll have a I Hate Boba Fett t-shirt on.
Shame on you. If you've enjoyed this discussion, you can find more adventures of the Mutantville players over at the MVP blog at www.mutantville.com. Follow us on Twitter at MVPLAYERS. You can follow me personally at JTMCROBERTS. You can find us at Mutantville Productions on Facebook. We're on Pinterest. We're all around. We're everywhere. All right, Todd, thank you for